Hello and welcome to Decision 2019, a special program where Arise News brings you up-to-the-minute coverage of the Nigerian general elections with context and perspective on the most important ballot issues. I am Christian OGODO. Thanks for joining us. Coming up in the next 60 minutes, top-notch comments and analysis with unrivaled insight, hindsight, and foresight into Decision 2019, including how are political actors reacting to the outcome of the elections conducted at different levels by the Independent National Electoral Commission. And as the drum of victory reverberates beside the winners, are the losers taking it lightly? Or are we yet to witness multiple election tribunal crises? We'll speak to a top politician who took part in the elections. And later, as both the ruling APC and main opposition PDP criticize the Independent National Electoral Commission over its handling of the polls, they have also treated accusations and counter-accusations of our alleged move to thwart the will of voters in states where elections have been declared inconclusive. We'll get top-notch analysis of what is expected of INEC. Now, the presidential and National Assembly elections have come and gone. Expectedly, winners and losers have emerged, and the most recent is the governorship and houses of assembly elections, with about 5 states declared inconclusive. For Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari, he is looking forward to a mutual and effective working relationship with the 9th National Assembly, which he says will improve the budgetary process and restore the country to the January to December fiscal cycle. While for the elections, the fight is not yet over in some quarters. The Enugu West Senatorial district was keenly contested between the Deputy President of the Senate, Ike-Ekweremadu of the PDP, and Barrister Juliet Ibekaku-Nwagwu of the APC. Ekweremadu polled a total of 86,088 votes to beat his closest rival, Barrister Juliet Ibekaku-Nwagwu of the APC, who polled 15,187 votes. And she was so determined to show Deputy President of the Senate, Ike-Ekweremadu, the exit door, having spent 16 years in the Senate. But eventually, the outcome was not in her favor. However, the former special advisor to the President in Justice Reform, Barrister Juliet Ibekaku-Nwagwu, is ready to contest the result at the tribunal. For more insight, she now joins me in the studios. You're very welcome.
Thank you very much.
I mean, looking at you, one was expecting, a gargantuan Amazon that could wage this kind of political war with a senator who's been there for 16 years and been deputy president of the Senate for almost 12 years.
Well, thank you very much. I don't think it's my size that is in question at the moment.
Absolutely.
So we're looking at all that has happened in the election, and we will come out with positions once the tribunal starts sitting.
But let's hear your positions, because that election was declared free, fair, and credible. What are your grounds here? What are your grouses here, rather?
Well, thank you. One of the things that the APC Enugu State chapter is looking at is the way and manner in which the election was conducted. The National Assembly election in particular. As you are aware, we sent a petition to the Resident Electoral Commissioner on Sunday morning. As the election was going on, we were briefing the Resident Electoral Commissioner, we were briefing the security agencies about the irregularities that were going on across the state.
What were some of these irregularities?
One of the irregularities was the issue of non-use of smart card readers, for example, in many of the polling booths. It was not available, it was not used. In many of the places, we realized as things went on that they were suppressed.
But that's happened too, in several parts of the country, and INEC, allowed it, overlooked it.
No, it's not about what INEC overlooked. It's about the circumstances in which we went into the election. We went into the election and were assured by INEC that smart card readers will work. And it did work in some other states. But let me tell you why Enugu State's own is quite unique. It is quite unique in the sense that we got feedback from several people who worked at the polling booth that there were attempts to suppress the use of the smart card readers in order to ensure that the ballot papers were freely thumb-printed, massively thumb-printed by PDP officials, and then handed over back to INEC officials to put back in the ballot boxes and counted as results.
But you had your agents there.
Just allow me to finish.
Go ahead.
No.
Please.
So in terms of the irregularities which you asked for, one of which is not use of smart card readers. Second is massive and indiscriminate thumb printing of ballot papers. When we came to the election on Saturday morning, in many of the polling booths, our agents reported missing ballot papers. They reported that in instances where you expect about 2,000 ballot papers to be present, they were only seeing 1,000 ballot papers. We reported it to the resident electoral commissioner. In the same vein, we also realized that as election was going on, that most of the people sitting as INEC officials in majority of the polling booth were PDP officials who did not have any business sitting in polling booth. And how can you expect that when state officials field officers for ad hoc staff and is allowed by INEC, that such persons will be neutral in anything they are doing? We reported it back to the REC. We asked on Saturday, by 11 a.m., we were asking the REC to cancel the elections. We got reports of intimidations. We got reports of thugs snatching ballot papers in my zone. We got reports of people's houses being burned down in my zone. We got reports of thugs actually denying and disenfranchising most of our members, not allowing them to come to the polling booth to vote. Once they said, oh, you are APC member, they are told to leave the polling booth, otherwise they will be beaten up. And those reports were documented and handed over to security agencies. By Sunday morning, we were calling for cancellation because the same thing that happened in Enugu West, happened in Enugu East, happened in Enugu North Senatorial District. And the House of Reps members, everybody marched. We were in a protest march to the resident electoral commissioner. The commissioner of police was duly informed, and the Inspector General of Police was duly informed. And we said we were not going to accept the results that came out of the polling booth. Now, let me tell you, as we were moving out of the polling booth, we also realized that instead of the collation officers who turned out to be PDP state officials, instead of collating the results at the ward level, they moved the results to the local government. So there was no, and there were no collation centers at the ward in anywhere in Enugu State.
But
and
at the polling units, the results were...
The results that were announced were changed at the local government level.
Did your party agents sign those results at the polling units?
The party agents, 80% of them refused to sign.
Your own party agents?
And you know why they refused to sign? They refused to sign because as the results were being counted at the polling booth, we noticed that the result sheets were not original result sheets. And so what happened at the polling booth were changed immediately they got to the local government. And that's why I talked about irregularities that are beyond you. It is beyond the party. Nobody have ever witnessed the type of election we saw in Enugu State.
That was the National Assembly election.
Absolutely.
And it was the same day the presidential election took place.
Absolutely.
Are you saying that the results of the presidential election too can be described as jaundiced results?
Mind you that what I'm contesting is my result. So let us try to distinct it from the presidential election results, because we didn't use the same ballot papers, we didn't use the same ballot papers, and we did not use the same outcome. So what I would say is, as far as the elections for the National Assembly candidates were concerned, they were merged in Enugu State with several irregularities. And
it was the same PDP officials, as you claimed, that were at the polling units during the conduct of the elections. So they were the same people too that may have fed the results, you're saying, for the presidential elections. That
will come into contest if the president decides to contest Enugu State results. For now, we're contesting the National Assembly results. And I'm not just the only person. All the National Assembly candidates are contesting the result.
There's something interesting here because Enugu West, you know, has a voters population of close to 1 million and the rest. And you now find that those who turned out, you know, total votes cast, or those who even cast their votes, when you put your own 15,187 to the returning Senator Ike-Ekwere-Madu's votes of 80,000, we're talking of just probably 100,000 votes. What could that,
you know, it's not correct to say we have 1 million.
I said about,
you know,
except it could be
Enugu
more.
State, the voters registration strength in Enugu State is about 1.9 million.
Yeah.
So if you take out those probably dead people and the rest, you may have about 1.7.
Yeah.
In the election, the total number of voters, in quotes, accredited, because we are yet to verify. We are now in the process of conducting analysis of how many card readers were actually issued in Enugu State, how many people actually came out. So that is an ongoing process. As of today, what INEC reported as the total people that came out of accreditation was about 400 and something. The number of votes accredited in the West, in the East, and in the North could differ within that figure, within that 400 and something. That is appalling. In a state where many people came out to register after 2015, that the only number we could actually record is about 400 and something. And that Enugu West, where you have the highest number, because we realized that as at post-2015 election, many of our people went out to register. Enugu West recorded the highest numbers of voters. So we are talking about close to 400 and something voters, probably in Enugu West alone. And so you begin to wonder what happened. What happened, and this is the trend, is that many of the people that came out to vote that they were intimidated out of the polling booth. I know that for sure because my polling booth agents were reporting what was happening, and I have records of what was happening in the different local governments, in the different wards. Some of the women that came out were told blankly, if you are not voting us, please get out of the way, otherwise we are shooting. And so they went back to their house. They said, rather than vote somebody we don't want to vote, we leave the scene. In Aniri local government, for example, as I told you, by 11 a.m., we were asking for cancellation. And why was that? We got reports that probably about 60% of the ballot papers were not at the polling booth. Boxes were missing. Ballot boxes were missing. And there was the number of talks across that local government did not allow our members to come out and vote. And they wrote a petition to the electoral officer in Aniri local government. Aniri is Ike-Ekweremadu's local government. They wrote a petition there and then and said, you must cancel because our people are not able to come and vote. What they call the RAC-Tech officers, the IT officers who were checking the smart cards, asked for cancellation. It was not affected. We called the resident electoral commission and requested that he move to Aniri to find out what was going on. Of course, he went to Aniri, but still did not affect cancellation. So we were recording at every point what was going on in the different local governments. And today, we are reviewing all those incidents with a view to bringing them forward in the tribunal.
Okay, why would you think, with all these evidence you've adduced, why would you think the REC would refuse to take an administrative decision that may just be overwhelming from your own perspective as a lawyer, as a politician, as a former advisor to the president on justice reform?
Thank you very much. This is a very good question, and that is something we are all asking. And we may never be able to come to the root of it. But one thing I can assure you is that when you get the Electoral Act, it talks about 4 grounds on which a contestant can go to court. And we've looked at those 4 grounds, and one of them is when you confirm that the process either was corruptly or that people who were supposed to work in that particular electoral process were corrupted. When we get to that stage, we'll take it one after the other. But my people are looking at the reasons, and certainly the security agencies are looking at it as well. They will come up with their position. Whatever position they come up with, we'll take it. But at the end of the day, we'll allow the tribunal to also make a judgment as to whether the procedure, which we, the contestants, saw as being irregular, as being fraud with corrupt practices, would stand. That is something that I cannot decide, but we have made a case that the election should be cancelled on the basis of those things that you just asked me. But the REC did not take those administrative steps to do so.
Did you at any time look at the popularity of your party, the APC, against a party that is, if I may use the word, very indigenous to the people of Enugu State? It's been PDP for, 20 years. So where lies the onus of your complaint, intimidation, when we know election in and out since 1999, the people have always voted PDP. And again, secondly, the APC in Enugu State was bedeviled with leadership crisis.
I wouldn't.
Before the elections.
I would differ with you strongly. And let me tell you, I spent 6 months campaigning after the primaries, and for all intents and purposes, our people were set of voting Ike-Ekweremadu out. It wasn't going to be about the party. It was going to be about individual. It was going to be about what the people wanted. And I think you can see that the pattern in other elections. Imo State, for example, you can see that pattern. You can see the pattern in other states. For example,
Imo is different. The politics in Imo is far different from the politics in Enugu State.
Yeah. Even in Oyo, that has always voted APC.
Oyo has been swinging. Oyo is not.
I'm just telling you that you
is either progressive or conservative.
No, you cannot talk about indigenous. Excuse me, because you can't talk about indigenous in states where people were not allowed to vote. I think what we want to look at is what happened during the election. It's not so much about, oh, this is how people have voted. No, people decided to vote individual. And going into that election, Ike-Ekweremadu knew that that seat was going. The intimidation and thuggery and massive thumb printing outside the electoral process that happened is something that, as I said, is under investigation. What happened during the election is under investigation and does not have anything to do with whether it was PDP or whether it was APC or whether APC had issues at the leadership. No, it didn't have anything to do with it. What happened was the denial of people's right to vote and people's vote to count. And that is something. And
that even affected the governorship elections too. Would you say that for the governorship elections?
I would say that there were issues different in the governorship election, which I don't want to go into.
Okay, but you accept the outcome of the governorship in Enugu State.
No, I won't accept it on behalf of the Goba candidate.
No, I'm talking of your party. You're all
our party is already contesting that election, the governorship election, and there are different grounds on which they are contesting it. Again, I will allow the Goba candidate to speak to that.
And does it, the grounds that they are contesting, your party is contesting the governorship election, does it temper the kind of...
it will be in addition. It will be in addition. Let me allow the Goba candidate to speak on those issues, and let's focus on the National Assembly election.
And the National Assembly election, so tell me, I mean, adduce your point that Enugu West Senatorial district, they were ready, to change from conservatism to progressive, governance.
They were more than ready, and we say that because going into that election, there were signals of the different blocks of votes that you will get normally in different local governments. Those things were votes that were already committed, and people have already taken polls, and they saw the different leanings of the different groups, including parties. I got endorsed by 30 parties in Enugu State. I was endorsed by those parties. But their votes,
their supporters' votes didn't amount to anything to you because you just scored 15,187
mind you, let me also say this. This is what we are contesting. And that is why we said that the accreditation of voters must be relevant in the process of election. When INEC decided to go into this election in 2019, they issued different guidelines. Within that guideline, one of the provisions of the guideline was the use of accreditation using the electronics, the smart card readers. So in every place where you failed to accredit voter, and you came out, one other thing that happened, which something that all of us are still wondering how it happened, was the use of PVCs by people who did not own the PVCs. So we saw individuals who came with about 1,000 PVCs, in some cases 100 PVCs. They carried it in their bags, they went straight to the polling booth. And in collusion with INEC officials, they started to swipe it into the smart card. But you and I know that if you have ATM card and you try to, you can swipe it in, but if it doesn't authenticate who you are, your data, you can't get money out of it, right? So this is exactly what happened. And this is why this is going to be a major determinant in the tribunal. So let's leave it at that. The most important thing today is that we have a basis, we have grounds, we have looked at all the grounds as provided by the Electoral Act as amended, and we are proceeding to the tribunal. Yeah, they are still at the level of allegations anyway, and yes, so I shouldn't even be asking your expectations at the tribunal. We allow the courts to take those decisions. All right, that's great. But let me take you back to being endorsed by 30 political parties. That's not a sine qua non, you know, may not be, you know, but what it means for the crowd or the people to vote you. Yes, but what it means is that you have supporters beyond your own party, including PDP people who were leaning towards, and that's why I said but this is not reflective in the result. The result you're seeing is what we're contesting. Again, let's not talk about those results. I thought you were talking about the processes. We're talking about the processes, and including that got you to the result. People, so you're saying that they are culpable. In my view, that's my personal opinion. Absolutely. Until the court decides otherwise. So what I'm saying is that the numbers you are seeing does not reflect the numbers that to our supporters, the overwhelming support, and the way our people, when you look, if you can ask anybody in Enugu State, 23rd February election was contested fiercely more than what happened last Saturday. Call up anybody in Enugu and they will tell you that last Saturday's election is supposed to be highly localized. It's not about so why wasn't it fiercely contested? Well, that is the question again. Ask those questions. But I'm telling you now that everybody was out on the streets on the 23rd. What then happened was the intimidation, the thuggery, the shootings. A member of our party, the house was burnt in one of my local governments within my constituency, because he decided to vote APC. We had PDP officials who were beaten up because they wanted to vote APC. We had people whose houses were blocked because they were clearly, and these were PDP members, they were clearly moving towards voting me. Not even about the party again, but voting I as a person. Wouldn't that be difficult to really ascertain? Because you're not using option A4 to see that certain voters were killed behind this candidate A or B. The reports are in the police station, and you can make your inquiries. These things are documented. PDP officials who were beaten up because they wanted on this particular election. Our people, Enugu West people, made up their mind that they've had enough of Ike-Ekweremadu. And like I said, that will be determined when we get to the tribunal. Okay, that's going to be determined indeed when you get to the tribunal. Let me just quickly ask you, even though when you were special advisor on justice reform, people will just be looking at maybe the acceleration of criminal justice system, prison reforms, and the rest. But again, one would have expected that you probably had an input, in advising Mr. President then, before your resignation, about the amended electoral bill and the importance of the reforms that it's supposed to bring against the kind of experience you had on the field. Well, remember that that bill was only sent to the president a month before election. Just about a month. And for you to activate a bill and for you to get INEC to implement the provisions of that bill, you may have to wait a year.
INEC said they were ready.
No,
for
INEC could not have said that. And why I say so is that when that bill came to the president, the question was, do you have to go back to the budget to make sure that INEC had the resources to implement the provisions of that bill? Because there's no way you can implement a bill that required almost, we're talking about moving from one end
budget had
to
not
the
even
other
been
end.
passed then.
No, it had been passed. It had been passed. You can go and check the record. It had been passed. So the question was, could you, mind you, that budget was already coming in late into the election period, and there was this contention about what happened. Why did INEC take so much time to present that budget? And when it's only in this country that people don't align budget with legislative provisions, because you cannot implement such a provision that deviated so much from what we have today without thinking of how you fund it. That would have required every polling booth to have the capability to the electronic system, the fiber system, and the internet system to move information and transmit it electronically. And it's not because the president didn't want to, but the president's position was that if you wanted me to implement it, you should have brought it earlier. Mind, I was part of the Electoral Reform Committee, and we made a strong case for that bill to have been passed early in 2018. It wasn't passed. That document, that bill, those bills were ready, and it was transmitted in time enough to enable the National Assembly passage. We did everything possible to ensure that it came out.
That bill was sent to Mr. President about 4 times
for his
assent. About 4 times
Remember,
for his assent.
The president still have and has the discretion.
Oh, absolutely.
To raise issues with a bill.
Absolutely.
And if he raised an issue with a bill and it went back, I don't think it would be proper to say that he did not want to sign the bill. There were reasons why he sent it back, and it was corrected by National Assembly. Yes. So what we are saying is that by the time it got back to him, we didn't have enough time to implement it. And so now we should be talking about how we get the president to sign that bill. Hopefully, if it hasn't expired its lifetime. So if it has not, it will go back. If it has, sorry, it will go back to National Assembly for representation. If it has not, you can be rest assured the president will sign it.
Well, if the 8th Assembly is prepared to look at it again before the expiration of its tenure, I think about June 4th or so, then it will be beautiful. If not, just like you said, it will start afresh in both chambers, but it can be accelerated. It can even be done.
Yes, it can be done as fast as there are bills that have come out faster than any other bill, but we made a strong case for that bill to be passed.
It's all right. I think we'll end it here and just wish you all the best as you go to the Election Petitions Tribunal with all the evidence you've adduced and gathered, and see maybe another female face in the Senate, because there are very few of them, you know, very, very, very few. One can count them on our fingertips. We want great representation for women in the Nigerian politics, governance, and leadership. Yeah, that's the former special advisor to President Muhammadu Buhari on justice reform, Juliet Ibekaku-Nwagwu, who contested under the APC platform, was a senatorial candidate in Enugu West Senatorial District and lost to the present Deputy President of the Senate, Ike-Ekweremadu. Thanks very much for joining us. Okay. You're still watching Decision 2019. Plenty more still ahead, including as both the ruling APC and main opposition PDP criticized the National Electoral Commission over its handling of the polls. They have also traded accusations over alleged moves to thwart the will of voters in states where elections were declared inconclusive. We'll get top-notch analysis of what is expected of INEC, so don't go away. Stay with us.